Such a complicated question, Sylvester.
Yeah. Welcome to my podcast.
I have been told that I'm not Venezuelan enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also been told that I'm not Mexican enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also been told that I'm not Spanish enough. Mm-hmm. So what the hell am I?
So what are you? You've been out of your comfort zone because not having people to connect with is being out of your comfort zone. When you then click with somebody,
it's the most magical feeling.
Right.
Yeah. Say like you're not Danish enough now.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like an
Fuck
oxymoron,
off.
doesn't it? It's not. Just fuck off. In my TED Talk, I'm hoping that I can reach people in knowing that there is a lot of beauty in knowing everybody else's story, and there's beauty in having conversations with people who are different.
You send out that signal to people that you are here temporary. Why would I make friends with you if you're here temporary?
People don't invest time in you.
Right.
And that sucks. Even 6 months into an experience like living abroad, you still haven't met all the people that maybe want to make you stay. It takes one person.
Mm-hmm.
It really takes just the difference of one person.
Being a white straight man from Scandinavia, there's not so many people to be like being super opinionated about me.
There's a lot of point of privilege in that. Must have been a hard life, man.
Yeah.
You have to believe that there's strength in diversity, there's strength and unity and diversity and in variety, because that's where you find like a lot of beautiful stories and a lot of beautiful efforts. I do believe that a lot of our differences are born out of fear. I laugh about it now. I wasn't really laughing at then. But
that says a lot about the podcast.
If there's anyone out there that's listening, you have friends who care about you. Reach out to them as well.
This episode is different. Imagine having to rearrange your whole life within 5 months. Finding a new place to live, finding a job, creating a whole new life from scratch. How would you do that? What would it teach you? And what is actually the difference of doing things out of self-discovery, self-realization, and then doing things out of necessity because you get forced to, because tough life circumstances. That's essentially what makes this episode of 2 years from now different from the other ones I've made so far, because they were based on voluntarily moves. Today you're meeting my guest Amanda from Venezuela, moved to Mexico, moved to United States, and now living in Spain. I think we can truly say Amanda is an expert of moving abroad. She's an expert of creating a new life in a new place, and she's an expert of putting herself into a place where she feels different, and then finding her own way and finding her own place in that, and making it a part of her. So this episode is for you if you're feeling the weight of life's challenges, if you are curious on the beauty and the strength that you can gain from tough life circumstances, or if you want to learn more about the power of diversity in a more and more globalized world. Amanda, she did a TED Talk on variety and unity in variety. Yeah, interesting talks, and a pleasure to have a TED Talker on my podcast, I have to say. So get ready for an inspiring hour ahead, and once again, welcome to the 5th episode of 2 years from now. Let's go. So we are ready. The sun has perfectly settled.
Finally.
For the 5th episode of 2 years from now, my podcast. I'm really glad to have you here today, Amanda.
Thank you.
As a guest. When I first thought of making this podcast, I thought the topic of having a dream of moving abroad, visualizing something, making daily action to get there, was a great topic for moving abroad, but also for achieving in general. I thought it was a good topic of talking about culture experiences, because we all who move abroad, we come from a certain culture and we are going to a certain culture. And lastly, personal growth, which is also a big topic for at least all the people I have met who moved abroad. Your story to me is a bit different, because we will obviously get more into that during our conversation, but it's Your story is also about, if I can say, involuntarily moving when you're forced to do it. And when I was actually sitting here when I made the first thoughts of this format, and I didn't even like pay attention to there are some people who has to go for several reasons. It can be parents moving, it can be war, like there can be many reasons for you that you have to move. But in where I came from, it was just, a self-realization, and living out this one life that I have. I believe the most appropriate question to start with is, what is your story?
So, my story is that I was born in Venezuela. I was raised in Mexico City, and then I did uni in the United States. And now I'm living here in Spain. Been living here in Spain for almost 4 years now. 4 years in September.
4 years in September.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you take us through the places you have lived?
Yes. So Venezuela was let's say my home country. That's where I was born. I lived there till I was 8, almost 9 years old. And basically because of the political turmoil that my country was going through, my dad decided that we as a family couldn't live there anymore. So we packed up our bags and left. And we went to Mexico. That's where my dad found a job. And I lived there from the ages of 9 till 19, almost 20, when I finished high school. And then I went to the States. That was my own decision to go to study in the States. Yeah.
That was your own decision.
That was my decision. I wanted to make that clear.
Okay. So moving from Venezuela, I hope the sound is all right because it's quite windy up here, but that's a part of the charm. Moving from Venezuela to Mexico was not very voluntary. It was something
I was
you
8.
had to do.
Like.
So, do you remember when you were 8?
I do.
How did that feel?
I was a very angry child. I'm not gonna lie.
Right.
Because that was, that's, ooh, there's a bee there. Sorry. Let me.
You react better than Tom did. Tom was more scared.
Poor thing. Going back. I was a very angry child when I was 8. Since it was a decision, like, I didn't know anything about Mexico, right? I was 8. The only real thing, like tangible thing that I knew about was Venezuela, was my friends, my family that was there, and I couldn't really understand beyond like I'm 8. I don't really know what the political environment was beyond that. My parents, like my dad and my brother would go to marches, would come home very late at night. My mom would stay up very worried about them, and that was the only context that I could have as an 8-year-old. I knew about Chavez, and I knew enough that this man was the president of Venezuela who started the dictatorship, and I only knew that he was the one to blame for me moving, and I hated that man. So honestly, there was a lot of anger in me as an 8-year-old, and I translated that also to my experiences in the first few years that I was in Mexico, which was basically unfair because obviously, it's a new experience in a new place, completely out of context of what I knew. But a lot of culture shocks came out of that experience.
Then you moved from Mexico to
and then I moved to Mexico, to the U.S.
Where in U.S.?
This was when I finished high school.
Yeah.
So,
where in the U.S.?
Oh, in Florida.
Florida. Okay.
Florida, yeah.
And this was something you wanted to do. This was
a move that I wanted to do because I like the U.S. for me, especially Florida, was home. It was something that I would call home because ever since I lived in Venezuela, even I would spend maybe 2 or 3 months of the summer in Fort Lauderdale in Florida, and that was the closest thing that I had to like consistency of a place for me to be tied to. And that's where like my aunts and uncles lived, and my grandmother still lives there, so it's like Florida for me is home base.
Okay. And then after 10 years in the US? 5, sorry. 5, sorry. In the US, you moved to Spain.
And I
or
moved
you
to
have
Spain.
to move to
Yeah,
Spain.
I had to move to Spain.
Yeah, due to COVID.
Due to COVID.
Okay.
Due to the pandemic.
And how does it feel to, like, that you have to leave the place where you feel home? The place you call home?
It's devastating.
Uh-huh.
It's something that I knew that I needed to do because at that point it was either stay in the US and become an illegal immigrant, which obviously makes my living situation a whole lot harder, or even try to get somebody to marry me just for the paperwork. And honestly, I don't want to do that. If I ever get married, I want to do it out of love. And it was like going to Spain was the only fail-safe I had because I have part of my family here, I have the nationality, and it was kind of like this is the way out to be able to be safe and to be able to still be close to people that I love.
What is the main difference in the mindset of moving because you want to and moving because you have to?
I think it's when you move because you want to, you kind of have a mindset of like, what are the next steps that I'm going to be doing? This is the procedure that I need to follow. This is kind of like you have a clear path of what it is that you're expecting, and you have probably researched the place that you're going to go to, and you kind of have a little bit of a more expectation of what you're going to receive when you move involuntarily. It's a little bit more scary. It's a little bit more like you're going on survival mode because you don't know what to expect from that move. You probably, like in my case, I already had part of the paperwork settled because of my privilege of having the nationality from Spain. But it is a little bit scary to think about what are the next steps there. I didn't have job security because I didn't come with a job. I came with just the possibility of starting a master's degree, some savings, and see where the wind would take me, because there wasn't really much other opportunities out there. The world was in a pandemic. It was in a complete shutdown. It was a very, it is a very hard mindset. It's just trying to get through day by day and thinking about the best way to survive.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you're moving to Spain, yesterday we talked about you had 5 months to do it?
Yeah, because the pandemic hit in mid-March 2020 when I was in the US. And in the job that I was in, they had offered me to do the sponsorship for my visa, like before the pandemic hit. And afterwards, I was working at a university. They told me they had to rescind the offer and that they would not be able to sponsor my visa anymore due to lack of resources because of the pandemic. And that was March 2020, and I had to figure out what I was going to do by the end of August of 2020, so 5 months.
Okay. and how do you rearrange your life in 5 months? What
Chaotically.
Chaotically.
Very
Tell us,
chaotic.
enlighten us.
I laugh about it now. I wasn't really laughing at then, but
That says a lot about the podcast.
What I did was I researched obviously a lot of programs for master's degrees, because I was like, I still wanted to continue my education, so I was like, okay, what can I do in the meantime while I look for a job over there? So I applied to some master's degrees in several places of Europe, mainly here in Spain, and a couple of others in the UK, in the Netherlands, and I think one more like in Switzerland of the sort. So it kind of came down to...
You didn't consider free education in Denmark?
At the moment, it was kind of I should have. Honestly, I should have. I was basically more looking for the program.
Yeah.
So I think it was more guided out that
reason. Valid reason. I will not take it personal. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
I could imagine if life hit me that way, both when you were a child and you had to move to Mexico, and when you had to move to Spain. I could imagine it's really easy to get to get trapped in a victim mindset.
Yeah, because you start thinking about like, why me? Why did this happen to me? Or like, why is it that I'm the only one who has to move? I have friends who have never moved in their lives. Like, why is it me that has to be so mobile? And having that mindset is really freaking detrimental to your mental health. And I found myself like, it was more after I moved here that I felt like I had been robbed of opportunities. And instead of, obviously, the pandemic isn't my fault, and none of the circumstances that involved me moving here were my fault. It was just a shitty moment to be living in. And I had to recognize in myself that because maybe my, like, for example, my brother did have the opportunity to stay in the US. He had a good, solid job and everything else. So
How come?
he had been living there for over
Okay.
10 years already. So it was kind of
Different
like
situation.
it was a different situation. He had a different situation than I did.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason I still had that feeling like, oh, I could have done better. I could have done a lot more to stay. And I came to a conclusion, obviously years later, that it was like nothing could have prevented what happened to me. It was supposed to happen. And at that moment in time, I took the best decision with the tools that I had, and that's where I am today. And to be honest, I am lucky that I moved here to Spain, and not even 2 months after I moved, I found a job. And that's the job that I still currently have. And it's been eye-opening in my career. It's obviously opened a lot of doors for me. I've been able to grow professionally in that sense. And obviously the mindset of just trying to survive started dying down a little bit, and I really started seeing the possibility of me creating my life here. And just deciding for myself, hey, I do want to stay. Hey, I do want to make my living here. I do want to create my hobbies here. I do want to kind of expand my circle here. But that took almost 2 years to get to that point after living here.
Right. And for clarity, if somebody's listening to this and wondering, how do you, as a Venezuelan, have to move to Spain? It's because you have a Spanish father.
I do have a Spanish father.
And a Dutch mom.
And a Dutch mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have lived in 4 countries?
I lived in 4 countries, not even 30.
And how old are you?
Not even 30.
Not even 30? Okay.
I'm not even 30.
So we are having a very international guest today.
I travel in the world.
I can tell. How much time would you say it takes to, like, now you've been living so many different places, you have been through so many different cultures. How much time would you say it takes to settle?
Oof. I guess it depends. Especially it depends on the mindset of the person who's moving. So if it's like an involuntary move, it might take a little bit longer. It might take 2, maybe 3 years for somebody to say, hey, like, this is my reality now. I can stop living in survival mode and actually start living fully in this place, instead of living half in the other place that I'm from and half where I'm not. So if it's more voluntary, I think the struggle there is more like, yes, you want to adapt quickly, but you do find a lot of obstacles in the sense of things are not as easy as they would be in your comfort zone in your home country. So I think there's slight differences, I guess.
Absolutely. When I traveled Latin America, I met a lot of quite superficial friends because I was living in hostels. And then I remember after around 3 months of traveling, I met in one. I was in Medellin in Colombia, and I met this really, really cool guy. Shout out Savannah if you happen to watch this. And this really nice girl that I was kind of having a thing with, and we were like so close. And I remember this took me, also because I was traveling around, but it took me 3 months to just run into people like that. So when I moved to Spain, and now I moved to Barcelona, and later 10 months ago I moved to Madrid, I try to remind myself, I call it the 3 months rule, that like it can really take time before you run into those people that make everything make sense. If you don't find those people, or if you don't find them short-termly, I think it's very easy to to feel you're being a bit different.
Oh no, for
In
sure.
that
I
place.
mean, it takes one person.
Mhm.
It really takes just the difference of one person kind of at least trying to figure you out, or at least trying to accompany you in that moment. Because I have like my best friend that I made in Mexico, Fatima. She I think if it weren't for her friendship in the first few years that I was there, and obviously the long-lasting relationship that we've had, we're almost like 10 years of being friends. 20, Jesus. 20 years of friendship. And
Time's running fast.
time is running really fast. But if it weren't for her, I don't think I would have been able to adapt as quickly, or I wouldn't have been able to feel a little bit feel more comfortable in Mexico if it weren't for her and her family, for real. Like, I think it just takes one person. It takes one person to see where you're physically at and try to get you emotionally in the right place as well.
Yeah. You have a TED Talk.
I do.
And I'm really proud to be sitting here having a podcast with somebody who has a TED Talk. I think that's really, really cool. It's Simon Sinek, Go Home, right? The title of your TED Talk is Unity in
Unity and Variety.
Variety. So I know the topic of feeling different and being a unity or not being it is a big topic for you.
It is.
Why is it a big topic?
Because I've always felt a little bit different. I mean, obviously in Venezuela I was one more of the girls where I went to school with. In Mexico, that very radically changed because I wasn't only the only foreigner in my grade, I was also the tallest girl in my grade by a very significant difference. And I was also different in the accent that I had with my with the rest of them, because Mexicans have a little bit a softer accent, a little bit more sing-songy, lyrical way of talking, whereas Venezuelans are a little bit more perceived as rude or crude because of the way that we speak a little bit more golpeado, as they say in Spanish, is a little bit harsher when we present it. Not that we're being rude, it's just the accent. So I wouldn't say I was bullied, but I was very alienated because people thought I was being rude to them when I was speaking. And it really wasn't that way. They weren't just understanding where I was coming from, and that made it very difficult to make friends because it was people didn't like the way I talked. So
and how does it feel to be in a place where people look at you as the different person? It sucks.
It sucks.
Yeah.
Because they like the physical difference of like being taller. I can't do anything about that. Like I can't cut my legs shorter to be like your stature. So it was like I stuck out like a sore thumb anyways because I'm just taller. With the accent thing, thanks to like good friends.
Is it very obvious for a Mexican to tell that they're talking with a Venezuelan?
It is very obvious.
Okay.
It is very obvious. So what I started doing was just like adapting my accent to the Mexican one, and now I can code switch. So if I'm with Mexicans long enough, I'll speak with their accent, I'll speak with their slang, I'll speak with their lingo, and it kind of like I can already mimic a lot. And people did call me Mexican for a long time, just like the last couple of years that I was there, because it did sound like I was Mexican.
Okay.
And then when I go code switch back to Venezuelan, which is mostly with my family and mostly with my with just people who are closer to me, it does sound a lot different from where I generally speak. And I even now mimic the sound of how Spaniards speak. I don't do the difference of the C, the Z, and the S, because I can't. But I do mimic the sound of how, at least lyrically, the accent sounds.
For somebody to be watching or listening to this who's going through an experience of being different due to culture, due to can be many things.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to that person?
It's good to be different.
It's good to be different.
It's good to be different. It's something that will make you stronger at the end of the day, because I realize there's a lot of power in the differences that, that I had. Especially in the power of saying, like, I am Venezuelan and I'm proud of that. I know where I come from. I know the struggles of my country, and there's certain things that I'm obviously not proud of, but there's a lot of love that I have for my culture, my food, the way that we speak, the little lingo that we have. I love that. And with Mexico, the same way. So it just, I don't think there's anything wrong with being different. It's just a very powerful tool to get to know other people who have widely different stories than you. And I feel like that's where interesting dynamics come in, and different relationships can kind of be cemented.
Yeah, I believe that too, but I also think it's really interesting because based on our conversation from yesterday and based on your TED Talk, I also got the interpretation that you don't like to be put in a box.
Oh no.
So you're proud of where you come from. It took work, but you're proud of where you come from, but you still don't like to be put in that box.
No, because I do feel like, for example, here, like in Spain, if I say that I'm from Venezuela, there's like this, let's say, unified story that people will assume that I belong to, which is like I'm part of the massive exodus of Venezuelans from 2016. And that's not my case. I left Venezuela when I was much, much younger. And for them, it's kind of like it doesn't make sense. It's kind of like if I'm Venezuelan, then why did I leave Venezuela so early? Why didn't I like Venezuela almost? And I really want to have the flexibility and the freedom to define myself as I wish, and I do want to be able to present that same freedom to everybody else. So that's why I would prefer to ask people, what's your story, rather than, I can ask where you're from, but I'm not going to ask them, like, what are you? Because I feel like that is such an objectifying question to ask somebody. It's like, where you're from or where do you feel like you're from is a lot more open question for people to say, like, oh yeah, I'm from like Costa Rica, but I was actually raised in France, stuff of the sort. So it does leave a little bit of freedom and wiggle room to say, like, in my case, I am proud of being Venezuelan, but there's a big part of my heart that's also Mexican. I might not have any paperwork to back that up, but I can eat a mean taco with a good sauce, and I will I will sign my paper like that.
We are not as different as you think. What does that sentence mean to you? Not literally, but that idea.
I think that the idea that obviously we are different, but we're not as different as you think we are, is at the end of the day, all human beings are made of stories. And we all have our different places that we come from and places that have defined us and made us the people that we are. So I did say that at the end of my TED Talk, because this was like a pivotal moment in the US. This was like maybe a year into Trump's presidency and administration in the US. And I do realize that most of his actions are to divide the people and to say, like, these people are different than you and you should fear them. And this is the part where I'm like, no, you have to believe that there's strength in diversity. There's strength and unity and diversity and in variety, because that's where you find like a lot of beautiful stories and a lot of beautiful efforts. I do believe that a lot of our differences are born out of fear of what we don't know.
And can you say more about what is the positiveness about differences and variety and different cultures being together?
Yeah, I think there's richness. I think there's something that we miss out when we don't explore other cultures, or we don't immerse ourselves enough in other places. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities and a lot of missed lessons
Yeah.
Because I think that the more that you travel or the more that you immerse yourself in different cultures, the more there's more richness and um there's more lessons that you can learn from other people. I don't think that uh the learning experience in just one place is enough for you to know like there's so much more out there. You have to have more curiosity than that. I feel like
And if you go around with a closed mindset, what do you feel like you miss out on?
a lot. I mean, if you're in a closed mindset, I think there's so many things that you miss out on. You miss out on events, you miss out on people, you miss out on just remarkable things that might happen to you in your life. I mean, obviously everybody is up to their free will to do whatever they want with their life, but I feel that especially when it comes down to life experiences, moving abroad and having to immerse yourself in a different culture from what you grew up in is so pivotal and so necessary.
When I think about it, my first personal experience of meeting somebody who was quite different to me was in my primary school. Might have been 7, 8 years old, and in the playground I meet this, I think he was from Ecuador. I remember going home that day from school and I was like, this was cool, this was different. And when you're 8 years old and you're in my case in primary school in Copenhagen, the broadest view of variety, that's the people on the other school 2 streets away. That's the weirdos, right? That's the people that are really, really strange because they're 2 blocks away.
Right.
And then, yeah, obviously the older you grow and the more you put yourself into, you figure out, okay, we're actually not that different, but we like to. I think it's a human thing. Also, like I'm watching football, so it's also a part of sometimes the way we define ourselves in being different to other people, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's really strong. I know it's also really important for you to emphasize that there's nobody who can take away your background, where you come from, and like I don't outline that specifically when I talk with people, but why is it particularly important for you?
It's important to me because I have been told that I'm not Venezuelan enough, and I'm also been told that I'm not Mexican enough, and I've also been told that I'm not Spanish enough. So what the hell am I?
So what are you?
So that's, you know, that's the idea of also not being put in a box, because I don't check any of those boxes either. So for me it's important to my cultural experience as well to be able to keep all those parts of me like sacred, and say like, because I maybe don't have the paperwork for Mexico, or because I didn't live long enough in Venezuela, it doesn't mean that I'm not proud enough, or I don't deserve those labels. I think the word there is deserve.
Okay, yeah.
Because I mean, it wouldn't be the same as, you know, you've been living here now in Spain for 2 years. So if somebody would come up to you now and say like, you're not Danish enough now, it kind of sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? It's not. Just fuck off.
Especially because there's a bit truth to it. Like, yeah. No, but yeah, but I get you. I think maybe also. I think also there is a difference to obviously the prejudgment you have of different cultures and different countries, and being a white straight man from Scandinavia, it's just from Denmark, it's with a great welfare society, it's just there is not so many people to be like being super opinionated about me when I go out there. Like
there's a lot of point of privilege in that.
Yeah.
It must have been a hard life, man.
Yeah. I've just been surfing my whole life.
Just coasting by.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Oh my god, you should try that. No.
No, I mean, I totally get you. Obviously, this is from a point of privilege, of course, because I do recognize also the privilege in the sense that I had the privilege of having my Spanish passport and being able to move country when I needed to. I've also been privileged enough to move out of the country that I was born into because of the violence that was turned into, and my dad saw an opportunity and said, I'm going to take it so my family is safe. So there are things there that I'm like, I know where my privilege comes from, and I know that not everybody can say the same thing, but I do think that the message underlying all this is that because of the differences that you might have with somebody else doesn't mean that there's no point of connection. Doesn't mean that there isn't something that a common thread that you can pull on and be able to talk to somebody just because they're different.
Yes, that makes sense. And talking about being different and having life coming at you and going through difficult things, I thought about like, hey, was my life just surfing, or was there like, what was the difficult moments actually? And I think when I look back, the first time I experienced being different or being against like being behind or feeling that there was something strange about me is also in the early years of primary school. I had a really tough time learning to read. And I remember sitting in my classroom with my classmates, obviously, and then this teacher from this special class who could help you to learn reading. She came in and yelled out my name, and everybody knew that now Sylvester is going because he can't follow us. He can't read. And it's just really those 4 meters walking from my table to the door with the whole class looking at me because they knew I was the guy who couldn't read. It was just really annoying, and really at an early age of being defined as different. When this teacher came in to pick me up, I really I went to this special class to learn to read, and she had some methods on how I could learn reading. And I had to spend my weekends when the other kids were having fun, and I had to spend my holidays reading these stupid kids' books. I was also fortunate enough that my parents could invest some time in teaching me. But then when I think back about it, I also realize from a very early age, I was taught to give it a bit extra when the other people were out having fun. And yeah, I think for most of, I will not call this a trauma, but for trauma or difficult experiences in life, there's always these, when you think about it, there's these benefits or these victories or achievements you also get out of it.
No, for sure. I mean, I did feel that because I got really good grades. I was a good student, mostly at the top of my class almost every single year. And
do you think that was related?
I think it was related because I also had the fact that my parents worked so hard to get me out of a dangerous situation, to put me in another school, to put me into this into this education system in Mexico that was high quality and everything else, that I really wanted to put my 2 cents in and chip into the family as best as I could. I had a scholarship and everything, so it was kind of like I felt this responsibility to kind of give back. And I always tried a little extra harder just to push through, just to make sure that I earned my way into belonging there. And that, I wouldn't say it backfired, but it definitely led to some situations where it was, it felt uncomfortable. Because I have this experience where, like, since I was top of the class in 6th grade, they would choose the 6 girls who had the highest grades of the class. This was in Mexico. And we would do like honors to the flag. So we would like march around with a flag and everything else. One of us had to be the flag bearer. I was chosen as flag bearer for the only reason that I was taller than the other girls and I wouldn't drag the flag. That was the only reason. But obviously the girls all there were all Mexican. I was the only foreigner, again, in my grade. And the girls themselves and the mothers didn't like that the only immigrant in the class was the one hoisting the flag. And that hurt, because at that moment I kind of like, I had even had conversations with my mom where I was like, I feel like I lost my flag. I feel like I don't belong anywhere. I don't have the Venezuelan flag anymore. And she told me that the Mexicans were loaning me their flag. They would gladly share their flag with me. And I took that to heart. I really felt that like deeply. And when I got chosen for the flag bearer, just over happenstance, really, over something I can't control, I was happy. I was like, oh my God, they actually do appreciate me. And to have then be confronted with these people saying like, I don't deserve it because I just didn't happen to be born in Mexico, that hurt. That really, really hurt. At the end of the day, my mom did fight back. I was always top 3 of the class. They didn't see a reason for me not to have the flag, and I do have pictures of myself holding the flag.
Yeah?
Yeah, in civic ceremonies and everything, and
And you look at them proudly?
now I look at them proudly.
Okay.
At that moment, maybe I wasn't as proud because it was a difficult moment. It obviously alienated me a lot from other people, from a lot of the people in the class. People were just not happy with me. But there are circumstances I can't control. I can't control that I was an immigrant. I can't control that I was taller than everybody else. That's just genetics. And I'm very proud. I do feel that there's a very big part of me that is very proud of being, having lived in Mexico and being a little bit Mexican.
There is this, it's called the eraser test. And it's by Mo Gaudet, who's former CEO of Google. Have you heard of it before?
I haven't.
Okay.
So
it's about for people who've been through traumas. And again, I'm not saying your experience is trauma or mine is traumas, but I think for all difficult experience, it's really an interesting test to do. So basically, what you do is that you write down the experience.
Okay.
And like right now, we are not writing it down, but we're talking about it, so it's quite top of mind. And then what you do afterwards is that you ask yourself, do you want to erase it? Do you want it gone? What you went through? And then you might have an answer to that. And then after, like it says, remember that if you delete this, you also delete the people you met, the learnings you got, the loved ones you met, all the resilience you built. And then when you take that into consideration, 99% of people choose not to delete the experience if they could. I think that's really, really a strong mindset. And do you feel the same way with your experiences?
Yeah, I do. I think every single experience, good, bad, and traumatic, have led me to the person that I am today. And I do think that, like, it has taken a lot of therapy and it has taken a lot of, like, self-love, but I like the person who I am today. I think the experiences only amounted to, the construct that I have for myself and how I present myself to people.
Yeah.
And I feel like that makes it, all of those experiences, worthwhile. I do think that.
That's really powerful. If we talk about in general, a big question coming up, in general, living abroad.
Okay.
You are, I would say you're an expert on living abroad.
Oh, for sure.
And for people listening to this with a dream of living abroad, what would be your best advice to a happy life abroad?
To happy life abroad.
Happy life abroad.
Don't be scared to actually go out of your comfort zone. And I mean, obviously, moving abroad is already moving out of your comfort zone, but I feel like people who make the decision tend to go back to the comfort zone and trying to find people who are of their same nationality or of the same background, and stick to those people. Try to stick to where it's comfortable for them to move on. And I say, try to hang out with the locals, try to hang out with people who are different from you, try to really immerse yourself into the experience, because that's the only way that I feel like you're gonna have a more well-rounded and a deeper, richer experience living abroad. It's not as easy as it sounds, obviously. I mean, this advice is a little bit, it is a very broad advice to give. The best way that I can describe it is that let yourself be yourself, and then people who want to hang out with you in the cultural sense and in that environment, they'll find you. And give it a good, and be patient, because it's not going to happen immediately. It's not going to be like the moment you move in, the person that is your roommate is going to become your best friend for life. Probably not. You might even end up not seeing that person again in like 7 weeks. Who knows? I'd say give it time. Even 6 months into an experience like living abroad, you still haven't met all the people that maybe want to make you stay. So it's really a test of patience, and make sure to just try to experience everything that there is to be in that place. Go to museums, go to cultural events, go to parties, speak with people. Even if you can't speak the language yet, try to. I think that's the best way to kind of immerse yourself and have the best experience living abroad.
Very, very valuable advice. I think I mentioned before, I have lived here in Madrid for almost 10 months. And I got my first Spanish friend recently.
Okay.
So I think that says a lot, because I'm not I am out there socializing, but it takes time.
It takes time.
But then when you get there, or when you meet that person you click with, it's just that feeling of you have been through so much, and so much self-development and grow, and you've been out of your comfort zone, because not having people to connect with is being out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Then when you then click with somebody, it's
the most magical feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about romance here. I'm
No,
talking about romance.
Platonically. I mean, it's like I find myself more clicking with people in a platonic way, more like, oh, this person thinks like me, and I want to...
What do you mean platonic?
Platonic as in there's no romantic feelings there. It's more of a friendship, romance, a cis-mance, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I don't care. But it's a relationship where it's basically made out of, yes, love, but it's not romantic at all. So it's kind of like I click more now with people in a sense that is more towards adventure, more towards cultural likes, more towards that kind of sense, instead of trying to connect with someone purely because of romantic reasons. So I feel like there's a lot more to be explored in that sense in relationships, especially when you're out in different countries.
In our conversation yesterday, you said something that I've been thinking about, which is, you said many things that I've been thinking about, but one of them is the difference of having a permanent and a permanent mindset versus having a more temporary mindset of where you are. Can you say a bit more about, for you, why is that essential?
Because for example, when I first moved here, I was in a very temporary mindset. I was very much convinced that I would go back to the US, and I would go back to what I would call my normal, my surroundings, my environment, my people, that's what I wanted to get back to. So the solutions that I would find here in Spain and the conversations that I used to have was, this is where I am at the moment. This is what I'm doing right now, but this is not where I want to be. And that was for the first maybe 2 years that I was living here. And now my mindset has shifted to a more permanent. This is where I go back to. This is my home base. This is where I go back to, you know, regroup. This is the place where I belong. I have a group of friends now that I like refer back to all the time. This is where my family is. This is where I kind of now think of Madrid and of Spain a little bit more permanently because of the opportunities that it has presented me, and of course of the relationships that I've formed. So it's more permanent. But that took 2 years to get into that mindset, and that depends obviously on the moves that people make. And even then, when you move abroad, sometimes people do come in with a temporary mindset, like, oh no, I'm just trying this out. I'm just seeing where this goes, and they end up staying. I mean, I think Tom had a similar experience. He came here for a while, went back to the UK, and he was like, no, I want to come back. Then came back permanently. It really depends on, I think, again, experiences and how you want to live your lifestyle. And I do like my lifestyle here more than I do the one in the US.
Conversation yesterday that I had a pretty, when I was living in Barcelona for 1 year before I lived in Madrid, and I had a pretty temporary mindset. Maybe not the first half a year, but I would say later on, I definitely knew that I would either move to Madrid or to a third place or back to Copenhagen at some point, for many reasons. But I think there is an attraction to that, meaning that is now being a bit spiritual, but I think really you send out that signal to people that you are here temporary. And if you're a local or you're somebody to live there more permanently, why would I make friends with you if you're here temporary?
People don't invest time in you.
Right.
And that sucks. And I realized that because I avoided most of my work colleagues for a good part of 2 years. And I realized that there are important relationships that I could have formed in my workplace if I hadn't had that temporary mindset. And in Mexico, the same thing. I missed out on maybe very important relationships or important friendships that, because of my temporary mindset of like, oh no, this is just temporary, we're going back to Venezuela at some point, I could have missed out on a lot of potential relationships, friendships, anything. Like, I know I could have. I know I did.
Amanda, I would like to hear more about, we have already touched upon it, but particularly how did moving abroad, adapting to so many different cultures, how did that shape your personality?
Oh, I'm very versatile. I think that I can adapt very quickly in a conversation. I think I can, like, it's made me very an extroverted individual. And I like having conversations with people about different things in their life, what's led them to be here in this city at this particular moment. I think that it has maybe a lot more durable in the sense that I might not get as tired or get as emotional when people say they're leaving or say that, you know, they might not want to be around anymore, whatever. I don't get as emotional, which is both good and bad. But I do think that, at least in my personality wise, I feel like it has given me a lot of good things. And it also has given me some traits that I do have to work a lot more on.
I think we are many people who can relate to that. We are, even though we're not in the States, we're going to be bragging a bit about you now, if you can say that.
Okay.
Impressive professional achievements. I was stalking you a little, not only in the TED Talk, but also a bit on LinkedIn. Graduated as top 5%.
Yes.
Made, and let's say it one more time, you made a goddamn TED Talk. please call me if you want somebody to have a TED talk. I would love to do that. I don't know about what, but that's secondary, right? No, but you've been a keynote speaker to a TED talk. You are for a living managing or helping managing social media accounts with millions
Yes.
followers, and also personally you have been in charge of growing social media accounts from almost nothing to thousands of
Yes.
followers, and you're not turned 30 yet.
No, not yet.
No. I know this is a very seeked question, but when we started talking about the things you've been through, going from so many different cultures, living abroad, so many different places, meeting so many different people, and having to leave so many different places, and also achieving this much, which is, I can say, definitely above average. Do you think there is a straight connection, or do you think it's just like a talent you have?
I think I do think that I'm resilient.
Uh-huh.
And I do think that I work harder than maybe most people, but I don't think that it's a particular talent. I think I just work hard. And if that's a talent, then sure. I do work hard. And I feel those achievements are based on my hard work, my education, and all the opportunities that I've had the honor to be presented with.
Right.
And that means, like, you know, I have to thank my friends, I have to thank my family, because they're the ones who pushed me towards my higher education. They're the ones who have also given me the example of what it means to be a hard worker and what that translates to, and not only in a monetary value. It's also because there's a sense of achievement, there's a sense of being proud of what you're doing. And I think there's more value in being proud of what you do, and that you're putting out some value out of yourself that isn't monetary. I think that's bigger than any sum of money that you could be offered to do anything.
And what could that be when you say non-monetary?
I mean, not monetary. It could be something like, I'm putting something out there in the world that is meaningful to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting out information about these beautiful cities that people deserve to know about, and they need to know their secrets about them. I'm in my TED Talk, I'm hoping that I can reach people in knowing that there is a lot of beauty in knowing everybody else's story, and there's beauty in having conversations with people who are different from you, and that there is obviously a lot of ways that I can say that my achievements are obviously born of my hard work, but I also think that there's a lot of people behind me that have put me in the right places to be in those positions. So I haven't done it alone, for sure.
What is one thing you know about the world that you wish everybody knew?
I know jack shit about the world. I'm kidding, but it's like such a complicated question, Sylvester.
Yeah. Welcome to my podcast. It's not gonna be easy. I'm not gonna let you off yet.
I guess what I know about the world is that there's so much to learn, and there's so much to be curious about in places, people, and experiences, that you just have to be curious enough to go through it, for good or for bad.
Good answer. Approved.
Check. Verified.
But we are not done. We have one final last quite difficult question for most
the
people.
hard hitter. You saved the best for last.
Exactly. And you might be able to foresee this question due to the title of the podcast, but here it comes. Where do you see yourself in 2 years from now?
All right. I see myself as head of a department in a company, because I'll be 30 by then, and I really do want to in 2 years. I'll be 30. But I do want to be head of a department by then. I do want to be living by myself at that point. And I think I need to leave it at like as broad as that, because not that I'm in a temporary mindset, of course, but I do think that because of what I want to get where I want to get to career-wise, I do have to have some flexibility in the sense that I might have to be able to move or to get somewhere else to have that position. So be it here in Madrid or somewhere else in Spain or outside of Spain, I hope to have that career-wise. And then being able to live on my own, obviously having the financial freedom to live on my own 2 feet, have my own apartment, have my own space. I think that's important. I wouldn't mind it to be with a partner. I also leave that open to see what in the world is going to happen to me in 2 years. A lot can change. But I am hoping that I will have the financial freedom to be able to live by myself and take that decision and be able to move up in my career. That's my goal.
Now it's manifested. Amanda, I'm really, really grateful that you took the time to come here and have this conversation with me. Not only for my pleasure, but also for other people going through not necessarily exact same, but similar experiences. Thank you.
No,
and
thank you for the opportunity, Sylvester. And you know, if there's anyone out there that's listening, obviously, don't be afraid to reach out to your loved ones if you're outside of your home country and you have friends who care about you. Reach out to them as well.
What a beautiful note to end on. Thank you.
Thank you.